Hello, welcome to one of the two pre-event materials that we've developed for you for the Research Champions Workshop 2022. This time we're going to be giving you a brief overview of all things research and outcomes at the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists. We're going to be introducing you to the team, showcasing a few of the pieces of work that we've been doing the last few years, especially since the last Research Champions Workshop, which is some time ago now. And we're also going to be highlighting some exciting opportunities for hopefully you to get involved with to develop your research, EBP, data, digital skills. So I thought it might be useful just to start with a very kind of brief introduction to who the research and outcomes team are and where they sit in the broader organisation of the Royal College. So we're actually part of what we call the professional development team. Our focus is on supporting the profession, so speech and language therapists and of course members, but we also contribute to sort of maybe policy documents and campaigns and other kind of things related to research or outcomes across the organisation. So as I said, we kind of work on all things related to evaluation, data, digital, measuring outcomes, evidence-based practice and research, and sort of everything that comes in between and cuts across those different things. So by way of a brief introduction, as I said, I probably should just mention quickly who I am. So my name's Katie Chad. I'm the research manager at the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists. I suspect probably most of the research champions might maybe have seen my name on various communications. I'm probably the one that's pestering you most of the time. Sorry about that. But I also kind of look after the Research Champions Network, if you like. So hopefully my name is a little familiar, but probably some of the other faces and names on the screen as well. So besides me, who else is in the team? So our team is kind of overseen and looked after by my colleague Amit Kulkarni, who you again may well know, may well be familiar. And Amit will be joining us at the Research Champions Workshop as well in the live event, so I'm sure you'll hear from him then. And really our team is then sort of divided, but with the caveat that it's divided, but we also work across sort of different work streams together, but between Catherine Moyes, who looks after the outcomes and informatics side of things, and then myself looking after more of the research related things. And the rest of the team, we're delighted that we now have a full sort of team of 7 here. So we have Sammy, who works on the outcomes project, and we have Nikki Grattan, who's now recently moved from a different role into a new role of clinical data and digital health officer. And we have 2 research and outcomes officers, Sarah and Millie, who work sort of again across those different streams of work, but we kind of have come together as a team because there's so much, relatedness against our different projects. So hopefully you will have known some people in the team, or you've learned a little bit more about who's in the team. And also just to mention that all of the work that I'm just going to highlight in this presentation is crosses everyone's different bits of work here. So this is by no means, me talking about my projects, and I hope that really reflects when you see the variety of bits that we have hopefully on offer for you. So as I said, I thought I'd start with just a kind of bit of a description about what we've been doing in the last few years. I started to think about how on earth to sort of tackle this, and of course a word cloud probably never fails. So this is a word cloud of all our kind of different job planning and work stream things that we've been going on, so to give you a flavour. Hopefully I think you'll see there's quite a lot of different bits and bobs going on there. Probably not surprising that research, the word research and EBP is coming out quite strong, as well as root, which you'll hear a bit more about later, and of course outcome measures as well. So breaking it down a little bit, I thought I'd highlight some of the key sort of research team projects that have gone on. Hopefully, maybe some of these are familiar to you, or maybe not, but I'll talk on them a little bit more detail shortly. So we've been working on lots to do with evidence-based practice and specifically training initiatives. We've had work going on to support research capacity building. Our research priorities project continues to be a bit of a flagship project for us. This is something that we started quite a few years ago now, and that we are continuing that work. Of course, we had the RCSLT conference last year, which our team was heavily involved in sort of organising and implementing. And we've also recently had more of a focus on research and evidence related to anti-racism, diversity, equality, and inclusion. And then again, just to go back to the outcomes and informatics team, what have they been working on? Well, we're continuing our Root rollout. For those of you that are unfamiliar, Root is the RCSLT online outcome tool, which is a big database collecting patient data from different teams and trusts across the UK. So we continue to update and improve that database and that online system. A part of that at the moment is actually looking at expanding it to collect some additional data. So this is particularly around collecting information about patients to monitor unwarranted variations. So this is specifically thinking around maybe collecting data such as the languages that a patient speaks or their ethnicity, to kind of keep a check on that health inequalities side of things. The team have also developed the in collaboration, with many other partners, the AHP outcome measures checklist. When COVID sprung upon our lives, we have been working hard to produce an additional online data collection tool for COVID related data, and similarly kind of developing the route again to make sure that we can code for things like COVID and long COVID. There's been lots of work gone on into creating the new telehealth guidance, and that was in relation again to COVID. And there is ongoing projects now in terms of updating that and kind of making it more long term. And there's lots of work that's been going on around what the digital priorities. Digital has been a huge focus in various different strategies that have come out over the last few years. And so that's reflected in what we've been doing as well. So I just wanted to take you through and highlight a few examples of the work that we have been doing in these different areas. I appreciate there's probably a lot on the screen, but I've just picked a few examples. So we've been rolling out a training package called Easy EBP, and that's been sort of a train the trainer approach where we've been working with groups of members, whether it's kind of hubs or SENs or local teams, and also been working with ASLTIP local groups to kind of unroll a package of support to take an evidence-based approach to practice. So highlighting different resources, introducing the theory and the model and so on. In line with that, we've been updating our web content, and a really exciting new piece of work that's going on at the moment is a systematic review, looking at sort of actually what is the best way to support evidence-based practice in healthcare. So this review is looking at, well, as it kind of says in the title there, the effectiveness of different programs on these kinds of different metrics. And what we're really hoping to identify from there is something that we can use and implement going forwards into a kind of a revised or an updated or a new version of the training that we'd developed previously. So I won't talk too much about the research capacity building work. One of the other pre-event materials is actually talking a little bit about about some of this in detail. So the thing you can see on the bottom left, the SLT Research Practitioner Framework Resource Map, has a whole other presentation dedicated to it. So I won't go through there, but just to highlight a couple of other things that's going on at the moment. So our research careers web pages are having a complete and marvelous sounding overhaul, and that's being developed by a group of expert members. Probably some of you listening to this are involved in that, and that's all coming together. So we're hoping that that will launch and be available in the coming months. We've also been focusing a little bit around student research capacity, sort of a lot of the recommendations and outcomes in terms of what might support research capacity in the profession going forward is getting in at that early level. So we've actually held a couple of student research placements at RCSLT, and we've contributed to this guide by HEE, and there's some other kind of plans for the future in that respect as well. So as I mentioned, our research priorities project kind of continues to be a focus. We've been really fortunate to work with, again, groups of members and experts to write up the work that we've done thus far. So this year we've managed to publish 3 articles reporting on the dysphagia, the DLD and the learning disabilities research priorities projects that we'd been running the previous few years. And that was kind of the end of what we've now called sort of phase 1. And what we're really lucky to have as well is Millie, our RNO officer, is leading on this project, which is phase 2. And phase 2 we're starting with the Learning Disabilities PSP. So what phase 2 is doing is really refining those research priorities that have been identified in the first phase to be very, very specific researchable questions. And this is because a lot of the research funders want to have this defined question, lots of the kind of backing information as to why and where that's come about, and that basically increases the chances of them funding it or taking it seriously to consider in terms of possibly themed calls and so on. But that work is going on at the moment, and that is being co-produced, so we're working really hard to establish, well, they have already been established, in fact, groups where we have academic researchers who are working with speech and language therapists and service user groups to do that kind of refining and development. So I think this is a really exciting part of the project, and this is kind of where it's headed in the future, is to do this kind of mapping where we look at the questions that come out, see what we can kind of do in terms of influencing and lobbying, and hopefully this means the research priorities will get taken to the next step. We've also been involved in other research priority setting work. So we sat and currently do sit on the steering groups for the Stroke Association PSP, which is now finished. And we also sit on the steering group for the Childhood Stammering PSP. And we have worked to secure a speech and language therapist representative on the esophageal gastric cancer PSP. So again, we're trying to really work hard to make sure that the voices of speech and language therapists and service users are heard in these priority setting partnerships. One success really, I suppose, with the Stroke Association one was that communication intervention actually came out at number 3 of their rehabilitation and research priorities. So this is really, really exciting in terms of making that point for funding for research relating to those areas. So as I mentioned on the kind of earlier slide, we've also been doing some work around anti-racism, diversity, equality and inclusion. And this has got several different kind of bits of work going on in the background, but we've been contributing to the health inequalities work that the RCSLT have been developing. So at the moment, this consists of comprehensive guidance and also an audit tool. And that's being that we've had a podcast on that, we've done a tweet chat, and there is also an upcoming webinar on the topic. We've also been collating all the relevant evidence and research, both for practice in terms of meeting needs of your kind of diverse service users and ensuring inclusion and equality there. We've also been looking at some of the literature and reports around research careers and the profession itself in terms of diversity and opportunity. We're also at the moment co-supervising a master's project and with a student at UCL, which has been really great. And they're completing a scoping review on sort of programs that address what we're terming for the purpose of the paper is cultural competency. But really this is looking very, very broadly at what kind of exists in the literature at the moment for education for allied health professionals in this space. So we're really hoping that the findings from this piece of work, again, will be able to sort of advise on next steps in this area. So turning sort of now more to the outcomes and informatics and digital pieces of work. As I mentioned earlier, the route, so the RCSLT online outcome tool, continues to be rolled out and flourishes. Lots and lots of development work has gone on in this for this tool in the last couple of years, including this. So I've just got a screen grab of the tool there. We've developed this kind of dashboard, which does kind of summary reports for all the users, which has been really, really well received. I also briefly mentioned the kind of addition to the route where we're looking at monitoring inequalities and unwarranted variation. There is a pilot project of this going on at the moment where speech and language therapists are consulting in terms of what data they can collect or want to collect and what's most valuable for the profession to really understand about the patients, the service users that are coming into our services, and thus potentially who might not be. We've also done some work using the root data set, kind of examining the impact of COVID. We were fortunate to have Pam Enderby work with us on getting this out into a publication. So that was kind of using the data to compare sort of COVID outcomes and post-COVID outcomes. So hopefully that's an interesting discussion that you can find in that paper as well. We've recently also introduced what we call the Root Monthly Metric Summary, which is a really nice way for us to be tracking kind of the growth of this project. So you can see there we now actually have 65 speech and language therapy teams who are inputting data into this. I say teams, some of them are entire health boards. So for example, in Wales, and also some of the other devolved nations, we have the whole speech and language therapists within the trust contributing data. So as you can see on there, we've now got, it's just shy of 60,000 sets of data. So this is where it's really getting exciting now to start to kind of drill down into those data and start drawing some tentative conclusions. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight as to what Root is doing. In terms of the broader outcomes program, we're doing various pieces of work in terms of supporting the profession. Actually, just a couple of weeks ago now, we held our first specific outcomes event, which was really well attended and possibly unsurprisingly surprisingly well attended, I think. And we were really delighted to have various speakers, including the CAPO Chief Allied Health Professions Officers across the UK, kind of contribute to that and identify why outcome measurement is so important, both for speech and language therapy, but also, of course, much beyond that. We've also done some broader dissemination around supporting the profession. So, for example, we presented at the ESLA conference recently, and that was more specifically around the value of sort of service evaluation and using outcome measurement as part of that. As I said, we've kind of been trying to push beyond the profession as well, whilst obviously speech and language therapy is our focus. We do typically not work in silo, and especially at the moment with changeover to ICSs in England, we've done quite a bit of work in terms of influencing beyond. So we've presented at the British Society of Rehabilitation Medicine conference, Parkinson's UK conference, and really just to kind of get the message out there that speech and language our speech and language therapists are kind of trailblazing in a way in these areas, and this is something for other professions to hopefully consider as well. We also worked collaboratively with all the other sort of AHP professional bodies to produce this resource on the right there, which is the Selecting Outcome Measures checklist. And that's a really, really accessible, handy guide for everyone, hopefully, to be using when they are deciding what their outcome measures are. So briefly on sort of the digital health and informatics side of things, again, I sort of briefly mentioned earlier that we had, in fact, developed a new data collection tool specifically for COVID-19 data. And part of this was identifying what that sort of COVID data set looked like. So that screen grab of the spreadsheet below is the result of lots and lots of hard work from members from the COVID advisory group specifically, and a sort of a subset of those members who worked really, really hard to identify what that sort of core data set looked like. And then we got it built into an online tool. So we still continue to collect data on that. And if you're interested in sort of signing up to do the same, then you can. There are definitely opportunities to do so. Again, as I briefly sort of mentioned earlier, the telehealth guidance has both been produced in the last 2 years and is now being updated. So that's a really, really exciting piece of work, huge piece of work that's going on at the moment. And there are also possibly some opportunities for you to get involved in that, which I'll come back to briefly in a moment. And current work also includes this digital health priorities horizon scanning, which is really looking at what is it that we as a profession, need to be focusing on in the coming years, what specific support my RCSLT members and speech language therapists need, and also things around sort of education and how do we equip our workforce to be thinking digitally going forward. So I hope that's kind of given you a bit of an overview of what's been going on. And now really I just wanted to touch on what you can get involved with. So just to say, all of the work that I've been describing just then really is member-led. So we work a lot with our members, and there are always opportunities to get involved in different things. And actually, it's absolutely essential that members do, because anything that RCSLT creates or produces needs to be useful to you. So there are some specific opportunities that I hope you might consider getting involved with. I suppose more specifically for Research Champions and Research Champions Workshop, we want to highlight a couple of those kind of opportunities that you might be able to think about in terms of your research CPD and adding those things to sort of your research CV, as it were. And also, of course, opportunities to sort of develop interest in data and digital and so on. So just a few research related opportunities. We are always looking for contributors to write for bulletins. So hopefully most of you might be familiar with the in the journal section of the bulletin. This is a really often very well received part of bulletin, or also our members tell us, and would really like to therefore keep it going and maximize it as much as possible. The in the journal section includes short summaries of recent research that people have identified as they think it's of interest and of relevance to the profession. It's a very short 200-word summary, and it's just a nice way to get you maybe thinking about what research papers have interested you recently. I think also writing a short summary kind of almost forces someone to really get to grips with the paper, and so that's a nice way of CPD for you, and also then giving back to the profession as well. We're also starting to run something similar online, which is more specifically oriented at kind of research and evidence-based related to anti-racism, equality, diversity, and inclusion. And this is really because I think everyone may have noticed, if you do kind of keep a tab on these things, this is a very hot topic, if you like, at the moment, and that's across things, including research. So there's a lot that's been published in the last year or two, with some really, really important learning, I think, for individuals, but also speech and language therapy profession, or broader healthcare as well. And this is kind of our way of trying to maybe support members to engage with that literature, and engage critically as well, I think. So that might be another opportunity for those of you who are interested in kind of summarizing the latest evidence in that particular area. On the topic of bulletin, we also exclusively invite our research champions to become peer reviewers for bulletin. Obviously, this bulletin is slightly different to your kind of standard academic journal. So there are things in place for bulletin that might be a bit different for your journals and peer reviewing journal articles, but we like to think of this as maybe a bit of a stepping stone to becoming a peer reviewer for academic journals in future. And there is still a very, very similar skill set that's required. You will receive guidance, and it's all anonymous, and so on and so on. So we're always looking for reviewers for that as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, do get in touch. A couple of other things that we're also kind of ongoing is consultations on NICE guidance. So the RCSLT has a really important role in consulting on new publications to see if they're fit for purpose. Do they address the needs of speech and language therapists who might be referring to that guidance, and so on. So that's a really important opportunity where we like to highlight relevant research, make recommendations for future research, because this could also impact on potential influencing funding for research later down the line, and kind of make comments on perhaps what they have stipulated in the guidance and whether that is really kind of useful for your evidence-based practice. The last point I'll leave, because I think that's a given, and I talk more about that in the other presentation for your pre-event materials. So outcomes opportunities, there is always the opportunity for you to register to use the route. You can do this as an independent practitioner. You can do this in an independent therapies team. You can do this as a whole health trust, or just a team of you within a trust. It can be very, very flexible. We have all the kind of data processing agreements and so on in place, ready to go to liaise with your service leads or data protection officers and so on, and lots of resources to support you to get kind of everyone on board and inputting into the route regularly. So on a side note to that as well, we, like I said, mentioned earlier, we are doing this pilot for these additional data fields. And if that's a particular interest of yours as well, there may be opportunities for you to get involved at this stage. Another thing we are doing is collating case studies of people that have used their data in practice to drive improvement. So this may well be outcome measures. It may be therapy outcome measures, which is what the route uses, or it may be something else, or it could be other kind of service data that you're using to have maybe identified a problem and implemented a change. So if that sounds like something that you've been doing in your practice, again, that's something that we would like to hear about and celebrate, and maybe you can help us to influence the profession to do that a bit more as well. Also, just briefly coming back to the route, if you are already using the route, hopefully you know that we are really, really keen on always getting feedback about the route. So the whole project development approach to the route is that we continually ask and seek feedback to make improvements. So again, if you are doing that, or if you start using the route, please do feel you're always welcome to send in your thoughts and feedback. And in terms of the informatics and digital or digital health strands, as I said, we have got an upcoming update to the telehealth guidance, and that will be going out for member consultation. So if you're particularly interested in telehealth approaches and what the RCSLT guidance is currently saying, that would be a really, really nice opportunity for you to share your thoughts and your feedback and help shape that piece of work. We're also hoping to start running some focus groups in future to help us decide on these digital health priorities that I was talking about earlier. So again, perhaps if that's sort of what you're interested in and you'd like to volunteer to be part of our focus groups, that would be really, really useful as well. And hopefully an opportunity for you to meet with like-minded people and again, sort of do a bit of that giving back to the profession as well. So I'm coming up to half an hour. So I just want to do a very quick summary for you. So hopefully, as you may have seen now, the research and outcomes team, we do actually run quite a wide variety of different projects and initiatives. So it's not exclusively just research projects and so on. There are lots of different things for you as members. However, the aim of all of them really is to support the profession, to take an evidence-based, data-informed, intelligent and careful approach to practice. And of course, the overall objective of that being to support quality caring and good outcomes for service users. Probably the most important point on here is that all of these projects are run with members and specifically to benefit members. So there are lots of different ways to get involved and shape the work that we do. And this is really, really important because that is your opportunity to make sure all the work that the RCSLT does is it meets your needs as a speech and language therapist. So not only might it benefit you in terms of your professional development or your learning, but hopefully you can see the bigger picture of what your participation in some of those activities might actually influence the whole profession going forward. So a final plea to please do get in touch. You can either get in touch with me directly, or you can always contact info@rcslt.org to get linked in with the right people about any of these different projects. Keep an eye out in the research newsletter for any new upcoming projects, and also in the Research Champions monthly roundup. I will also highlight some specific opportunities for you to get involved with then as well. Thank you so much for listening. Well done if you've managed to listen this far. And I look forward to seeing you at the Research Champions Workshop on July the 6th. Thanks, bye.